Hey witches, hey! So I am checking in with another video this week. This week we are going to be putting the craft in WitchCraft, quite literally. We're going to be working on what I would like to call a metaphysical wall hanging. Ta-da! This is going to do a couple of things for you. One, it's going to allow you to have one place to add all those bits and bobs that we collect as witches. Seriously, you're going through a forest, you're going through the desert, you're walking along the beach. We collect all those little pieces, and sometimes they end up in sacred space on our altar. Other times, we're kind of like, what do I do with this stuff? So this is an answer. Number two, this is also a nice thing to add to your home warding system for protection or whatever will you want it to be. So if you guys want to see how I pulled off my metaphysical wall hanging, just keep watching.
Alright guys, so I decided to go with a triangle shape for a couple of reasons. I wanted to play off of that whole fire energy, and I wanted to play off of a triangle of defense. So this is the shape that I chose for the base of my metaphysical wall hanging. I chose to make the triangle out of ocotillo branches, which is the type of desert shrub plant that we have out there growing in the wild. I actually have a dead one in my yard, so that is where I got the branches from. It's kind of interesting because people will use those branches for security fences, and I can see why, because the thorns are actually almost an inch long. So there's a bit of a play of thorn magic on there for mega protection. Also, I want to say that I tried to keep this project very natural. I chose to use hemp string when I tied the ocotillo branches together. Hemp is a good magnifier. It magnifies magic, your intention, and your programming. So what I wanted to bring in was positive energy, healing, and love and peace, and also add that extra kick. So that is why I used hemp string all throughout this project. Moving on to a little witch's bottle, which is another addition I wanted to add here. I just wanted to keep it pretty basic, mostly just salts. So I chose to first use good old plain table salt. You can find this anywhere. I decided to layer it. I used the table salt, and then I added some cactus spines from a prickly pear cactus. Even though you can't see them in the jar, they kind of get buried with the salt. They are there. Another layer of protection. Then I layered in some sea salt, and I went back and added a little bit more table salt. And lastly, I put in some Himalayan salt. Now I chose to do this little witch's jar or bottle in the middle of the triangle to basically cleanse and purify the area, the home. And I wanted the salt to remove negativity from the home, and I also wanted to add that layer of protection from the salt as well. Once the witch's bottle was actually done, I then attached it to the top point of my triangle and just did 3 good knots to make sure it's on there and it's not going to go anywhere. Now I moved on to a witch's ladder. This is one of the main pieces of this wall hanging. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about witches' ladders because I feel like we all know about these, or we should do. I chose to keep mine pretty simple. I went with 13 points of interest, or 13 knots, 13 spells. I chose to use dove feathers because they are prolific where I live right now, and doves are a symbol of love and kindness and peace. So I definitely want to bring all those vibes into my home. So that is why I chose to use dove feathers. Now, the crystals that I used are these raw clear quartz chunks that I found at Michael's, I believe. They're the only stone on this wall hanging that was actually purchased out of a store. Now, I chose these because they have the drilled hole through the middle, and it was easy enough to slide the cording through and knot on both ends. Plus, I wanted something really chunky and substantial on this ladder. Now, the clear quartz, again, repelling negative energy and to amplify the spell that is attached to this wall hanging. While you're doing the witch's ladder, you can chant and do the classic incantation as you tie your knots. You need to focus your will and your energy on the goal. I'm keeping my incantation and chant private, but you can easily Google that and find one that you can kind of tweak to make it your own, which is basically what I did. Another thing I wanted to drop in here about the witch's ladder. When you are tying your knots, it helps a lot to kind of like, once you tie that one knot and you have that feather there and you're going for the second one, if you drop it down and kind of like compare the last space to the new space, it'll kind of give you a measurement so you can keep them even and keep it tidy. Next, we're moving on to a couple of other witch's bottles that I wanted to add to this wall hanging. This wall hanging is very much steeped in desert magic, and how could I not add some creosote to this? After all, my namesake on YouTube is Creosote Coyote. So, creosote bush. The first thing I decided to add in one of these little jars is the seeds of the creosote bush. These are the funniest seeds I have ever seen. They are so fluffy. They're little pieces of puffy fuzz that roll across the desert in the wind whenever we have storms and such. And now if you actually turn them just right, you can see that they make the little, like a little star shape, a little pentagram, literally the 5 points. It's actually really kind of cool. I'm gonna add a little nugget of information here too about creosote. Did you know about the king clone plants? Or actually, I should say the king clone circle. It's literally a circle of creosote bushes out in the middle of the desert, and it rings in as one of the oldest living organisms on Earth, clocking in at almost 12,000 years old. Isn't that a trip? Seriously. So one of the other bottles, I wanted to add some of the creosote flowers, which are these really pretty bright yellow flowers. They have that smell that creosote is famous for, that kind of smells like rain. The flowers are drenched in that smell as well. 5 petals on that flower as well too. So it's one of my favorite things. I decided to add as much layers of creosote as I could. Then I went in to add in a bit of animal magic. I added one of my barn owl's feathers. This is symbolizing protection against harm for me, and this is here to ward off any evil spirits that try to enter my household. Also decided to wrap around a little bit of this brown fuzzy twine on the end of the feather because it was looking a little rough, especially on some of the downy parts of the feather, and I felt like this just really tightened it up, and then it gave me a nice place to add a little stone that I had found in the desert as well. Okay, so in these next segments, there will be some animal parts added. I will timestamp it down below so you can avoid it if you'd like to. I chose to use a piece of a lizard tail, which you will see in a moment. I chose to use that because it represents movement to me. I want everything in the household to kind of be moving around. I don't want the energy to be stagnant. I also chose it because lizard represents adaptability to me. I want the ability to handle whatever comes to us in the household. Whatever happens, we can handle it. I also chose to use a piece of bone that I found in the desert. It's a piece of vertebrae or the spine, and I chose to use that because it represents strength and balance to me, which is so important for me because I always struggle with the balance of work and play. Also, I think it's really important to lay things out so you can kind of gauge where you want to tie them. So I'm going to close this with saying thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.